That's a real thing still?
Faded.
Are you sure?
Day by day. Vaccine by vaccine.
He's calling.
It's all the way back there.
I don't want to knock your piano. Turn around. Alright. You guys ready? Alright guys, welcome to Foundation Church. If you're watching online, we're glad you're joining us. If you want to stand and join us, we're going to get into some worship. I am excited on this Valentine's Day that you guys go ahead and stand now if you want. That's okay. That's all right. I'm excited to be here on this Valentine's Day and have this opportunity to worship with you guys. I know I'm excited about the songs you guys have tonight, but also another opportunity to hear a message, a word of God from my wife that she's been preparing this week. I promise I'm going to get back to preaching very, very soon. She's just been filling in some crazy things with work, and I haven't quite had the time that I need. So I'm very thankful for my wife. But before we get into that, before we have the message, let's have some worship.
Moment by moment, beat by beat. still is and be for real. So come with me in the space between all the things unseen and this reckoning. I know I will never be alone. I know I will never be alone. There'll be another in the fire standing next to me. There'll be another in the waters. the message.
Get started. Thank you. All right, let's pray real quick before we get started, and then we'll jump in. If I can get my notes. All right, dear God, thank you for this night. Thank you for everybody in this room. Thank you for the ones listening online. I thank you, Jesus, that the words I speak tonight are not mine, but they're yours. And thank you for guiding me tonight. In your name, precious holy name, we pray, amen. All right, so has anybody heard the song, Do What You're, I don't know the exact name of it, Zach's probably heard of it, Do What You Were Famous For. Jeff knows what I'm talking about, okay? I can't think of the name of it, but, so I was on my way in today, and so I had music blaring in the car, worship music, and this song came on, and it kind of got me thinking because it kind of had to do with some of what I was preaching on today. Actually, let me see. So it says, make way through the waters, walk me through the fire, do what you are famous for, do what you are famous for. Shut the mouths of lions, bring dry bones to life, and do what you are famous for, do what you are famous for. And I had heard this a couple times, and I really liked it. But I took it as, sounds kind of rude, but Jesus, please do what I've asked you to do. Like, I know you can do this, so please just do it. I realized that was kind of harsh. And then I realized, yeah, I like the song, but that's kind of harsh. I'm telling Jesus what to do. But then I heard it today, and I took it totally different. Isn't that crazy how we do that? I took it totally different because I realized what it meant. It meant, Jesus, I'm yours. Okay? No matter what you want me to do, take me. I trust you. I have faith in what you're going to do. And that follows right along with, if you've been here the past couple weeks, few weeks, this is what we've preached on, what is it? It's faith and it's trust. And that's what Jesus was showing us all throughout the Bible, was just to trust him and have faith in him. And so right away I want to jump in to John 11, 1 through 4. Now a certain man named Lazarus was ill. He was of Bethany, the village where Mary and her sister Martha lived. This Mary was the one who anointed the Lord with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. It was her brother Lazarus who was now sick. So the sisters sent to him saying, Lord, he whom you love is sick. When Jesus received the message, he said, the sickness is not to end in death, but it is to honor God and to promote his glory, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. On to verse 5. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Loved them. It's telling us that very clearly. Love them so much, let's picture it as they're not just friends. How many of us in here have those friends that are more like family? Like, you don't call them friends. They're your family, okay? You would do anything for this group, your family, your friends. Over the past 2 years, Nam and I have gained a really, really core group of friends, but we don't call them friends. We literally call them family, okay? And I know that if I called and said, I need you, they would be there. But most of all, I know if one of them called me or Nam and said, hey, this is what we need, I would go right away. Like, there'd be no hesitation, right? Because they're family. We love them, they love us. So this is what we have here. This is kind of like a family. How about moms in here? If you get a phone call about your kid. I know if I got a phone call about my kid, which I've had before, I'm going 90 down the highway. No, not 90, but okay. And the whole way you're praying, dear Jesus, please don't let me get pulled over. Please don't let me wreck. Please don't give me a speeding ticket. Okay? You don't care though, right? Nothing's going to stop you. You're going to get to your kid. You love them. So verse 6. Therefore, when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he still stayed 2 days longer in the same place where he was. Jesus loved them so much, but he did not come when they needed him. Okay. We talked last week about Jesus doing things backwards, and that he spoke backwards. That most of the time, his ways to us, they don't make sense. And a lot of times we're not going to make sense of them. And we went over all those. And we don't have time to do that tonight, but if you're in here, you know what I'm talking about. And one of the key things I said last week, I said, it's really hard to trust God by his motives when we're disappointed by his methods. That's what's hard. Here's what we have to understand. We cannot confuse love and comfort. Sometimes we put the two together because we think being loved means being comfortable. That's not always true. Automatically, we would say, if you really didn't understand Jesus here, you're going to say, well, Jesus really didn't love them then. Because if he really loved them, he would have been there. He wouldn't have waited 2 days. He would have been like, listen, these are my very dear friends. This is my family. They need me. I've got to go. But that's not what happened. First of all, like I said, love is not comfortable. It is not comfortable. Love is reckless and it's messy, and we have a hard time believing that God would leave 99 to go for one. And some people don't like to hear that. We have a hard time when we ask Jesus to come help us and he doesn't show up, but yet waits 2 days before he leaves. We have a really hard time with that. And we find ourselves mad. But once again, there's 2 things that we're being taught throughout the Bible. If you read story after story, yes, there's different stories, you're pulling out a lot of things, but there's 2 main things you're pulling out of every story in the Bible, and it was faith and trust. That's what he's wanting, is faith and trust. And we don't like it because it's not comfortable. To actually do that well, we're going to have to be uncomfortable. Think about that. To actually have faith and trust, you're going to have to be uncomfortable. So you say, well, I really do love Jesus, but I can't do that. There's 2 different sides here, guys. It's not comfortable because we don't understand it. It requires us to use nothing but faith. Literally, sometimes we have to just rely on nothing but faith. That's all he gives us. Here's that backwards concept again. We say we have to see it to believe it. But what are they showing us in the Bible? You have to believe it to see it. It's backwards. So our issue is if we haven't read our Bibles and we don't understand how God works, and we can't trust or have faith in him, and then we find ourselves in the mess we're in. Because if we're not digging into God's word to understand that he's not going to do things Kayla's way, I'm not going to understand unless my face is in this book. Because I can't understand his ways unless I read this to understand it. Without this, you have the human worldly knowledge that says that way is not correct. That is backwards. I can't do it this way. But if you get in here, you go, oh, I can do this. It's not going to be comfortable, but I can do this. This is possible with him. If we don't read these stories in here, if we don't try to understand these messages and these lessons, then what do we expect to happen? First of all, we're not going to react in the right way. When something happens to us, we're not going to react in the right way. We've got to stop relying on worldly love and understanding, because that's not going to help us. Worldly love is nowhere near the same definition of God's love that he's teaching us all throughout this book. It's nowhere near. They're on 2 different ends of the spectrum. They're as far apart as you can imagine. Honestly, it leads to brokenness and searching, because you're searching because you don't understand the difference. And ultimately, it leads to death. And in our story today, what's it start with? We're starting with death. And you're like, really? Starting with death tonight? I know, depressing, but what did we say last week? If things are backwards, as Christians, and we read our Bible, what is death? Death is victory. Death is home to us, right? That's kind of hard to comprehend, but it is. The Bible does not end in death, if you remember. Yes, Jesus dies on the cross, but it didn't end there. And neither do we. So, real quick, I want to go into a couple things. And I know I've touched on it a little bit, but I actually want to go more in depth about River today. Explaining more in depth and maybe sharing a little bit more of my testimony with River and how this has played out in the past. Well, he's 8 months old now, which seems crazy. So I'm going to go through it kind of quick. I'm going to try and follow my notes so I remember all the details. So basically what happened is I went in for a 20-week ultrasound. All my other ultrasounds have been perfect, okay? Looked like a perfect baby and no issues. We have 6 kids. We've been through multiple ultrasounds, no big deal. So we went in for a 20-week, and I could tell something was wrong, and I sat and I listened to a doctor tell me there was something terribly wrong. She said the best possible outcome for you, and this is what I would hope for, is that he just has Down syndrome. That's going to be the best case scenario of what we're looking at, is if he just has Down syndrome, because at least he'll have some quality of life. There's a little bit of hope for life there. And that really bothered me. I was sent to Riverside later that week where they found that River had HLHS, which, not going into huge detail, basically means half a heart, okay? So his left side of his heart is either basically missing or it's teeny, teeny, tiny. I spent the next 20 weeks driving to 3 different hospitals so they could keep an eye on River and how his little body was growing. So we'd literally go to Nationwide Children's, and it was crazy. They would do an ultrasound, but they were performing through the ultrasound an echo on this teeny tiny heart. And they would sit with teams of cardiologists, literally with just an ultrasound on my stomach, and examining his entire tiny, tiny heart at 20 weeks. Unreal, guys. And then we spent 2 other hospitals where they're keeping a close eye on his growth, other organs of the body, anything you can imagine at that point. Okay? What am I thinking here, guys? In the beginning, what am I thinking? In the beginning, I believed that he was going to be whole. I said from the beginning he would be healed, he would be whole, because that's all I knew. That's all I knew to do. I knew that it would be a miracle, and that's how the story was going to go. And I was so excited because one day I would share the story of the miracle of my son River. My miracle. You notice I say my miracle of my son River with everyone. And everyone near and far was going to hear about River. And this miracle that he was born perfect with a whole heart and all the other organs, everything about his entire body was perfect after all the diagnosis that said, hey Nam, hey Kayla, you guys may need to rethink this. Are you sure you want to go past this 20 weeks? Are you sure this is the route you want to take? We have 3 other options for you. No, our option is life. No matter what, our option is life. It sounds goofy, but I think I was, and I don't think I know, I was trying to control an outcome of what was going to happen because I wanted it to happen a certain way. I knew if River was born, what they're telling me, it was going to be uncomfortable. Not just for him, but for our family, for our church. Everybody involved, it was going to be uncomfortable. Would the church survive? Plus going through a pandemic. Would River survive? Would I survive? Jesus, and here's what we do. We go and we plead with Jesus and we tell him why we can't do what we see unfolding. We said, Jesus, we don't have the finances for this. Jesus, I don't have a medical degree to take care of a child with what they're telling me he has. We don't have a big enough car for everything he's going to have with him. We don't have a house suitable for him. So you know what? I know for sure this is not your plan because you wouldn't do this. Because this doesn't add up. Why? Worldly wise, it didn't add up. It didn't make sense. I know this is not your plan. I know there's going to be a full healing miracle in River's life, and we can move on. And if you notice, I even controlled the timing of my miracle, because I said in the beginning. I didn't say let River be born in a couple months and then heal him. I said I want it in the beginning. I want it before he's born. I want a full miracle. A perfect heart in this child. Have you ever prayed and believed for something, and it literally went the opposite direction and kind of just smacked you right in the face? Like, thanks. Okay? This is what we're seeing here. Mary and Martha and Lazarus, they took care of Jesus. I'm assuming they cooked multiple meals for him. They were friends, they were family, they loved each other. Jesus said he loved them. Loved them so much that he stayed 2 extra days. Or is it me reaching out to God for River's life? I need you now more than ever, God. Please come now. River needs you. Please come now. It's the same thing. You know, the first 2 days, what was running through their head? The first 2 days, because if you notice, it said they waited 2 days before he left. So think of the timing here. We don't have communication like we have today, so it wasn't simple, pick up your cell phone, okay? There had to have been a way communicating back and forth. So this took a little bit. They had to have been saying, he never showed. He's not here. But we all relate to that right there. All relate to that moment. Because we think he didn't show. He didn't come and fix what we wanted him to fix the moment we wanted it fixed. A lot of times he waits, and we don't like that. He didn't rescue you from what you wanted rescued from right away. Once again, I feel like I'm on repeat, but Jesus does things backwards. And if you've been in church with us, and you've listened to Nam or I preach, we say one thing and we say it all the time, and this is what we live by. Because this is life-changing, okay? You live life forward, but you understand it backwards. Because when you're in the moment of something, you don't understand it. But if you think about something in your life, right here at this moment, think about it. If you look back at it, you were furious the entire time you went through it, but if you look back at it now, you go, I know what happened now. I know why it happened. I see how it worked out. Let's read John 11:2. So, I'm going to be very honest here. Does anybody follow Foundation Church page very closely? Somebody might notice that there's a picture on there of the verses for this week. And it actually says it's out of John 12. Because, once again, I started a sermon, and I can promise you, God told me, Kayla, you're preaching out of John 12 today, for this coming week. And so I started studying in John 12, okay, where she has the perfume bottle, and she's at Jesus' feet. That's what I was going into. But what I was led to, that's in chapter 12. Hear me out here. But let's read John 11:2. What's John 11:2 says? This Mary was the one who anointed the Lord with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. It was her brother Lazarus who was now sick. Guys, we're in 11:2. This doesn't happen till 12. John 12. I was like, all right, God, what are you trying to show me here? Like, I'm so confused. Let's just be honest with you guys. I'm like, I don't understand what you're trying to show me. Why was this in 11:2 and it didn't happen till 12? And then it hit me. I stared at it for a while. I literally just stared at it. What is he wanting us to see? Why did he want us to see this now? God wanted them to see the good at the end of their story. That's why. God wanted me to see River in this church service healthy and whole today. In the beginning, all we see is death. That's what I saw. They kept telling me all this stuff. River won't make it. There's only half a heart to control an entire body. Because if you don't realize this, which I've learned so much, is how much the heart controls. It has everything to do with your entire body. Every organ, everything you can imagine in your body, everything you do is run by your heart. Everything. There's only half a heart to control that entire little body. It's too late. It's too late, Jesus. We called for you 2 days ago. Lazarus is now too sick. The thing I think we've been taught and we've misunderstood, that I misunderstood in my situation, and I want to be very clear how I state this so you understand this, is we misuse the idea that faith determines outcomes. I know some of you are probably questioning that right now. That we as people can control and determine the outcome of a situation. So if I believe this, then this is what I will receive. So let me clarify this. I want to make this very clear. We cannot manipulate God. We cannot manipulate God. We can expect great things in faith. Nam and I believe, and our kids know this, we speak in faith. They know this. They get in trouble for not speaking in faith. We say, watch your words, and they know this. And anybody that's been around us makes fun of us because they'll go, words, okay? It's speaking in faith. That's not what I'm talking about. But the idea of going into it and thinking we're going to manipulate God's plan, and that's exactly what I tried to do. Is I tried to manipulate his plan into something I wanted so I could be comfortable. Because I thought God's love and comfortability were the same thing. And I was mistaken. You cannot manipulate God and change his plans. First of all, I hate to tell you, but this is what I realized, we're not that powerful. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Most people wanted the miracle for River. All kinds of people, I'll still see them, they go, we truly believe for that whole heart. In the beginning, that's what they'll tell me. In your womb. That was because it was their understanding. They couldn't understand God's. They couldn't understand why God would wait to give River a miracle so late. Let's jump into John 11, 7 through 17. I'll kind of go through these quick. Then, after that interval, he said to the disciples, let us go back again to Judea. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews only recently were intending and trying to stone you. Are you thinking of going back there again? Once again, disciples, we do not understand his ways. Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours in the day? Anyone who walks about in the daytime does not stumble because he sees by the light of this world. But if anyone walks about in the night, he does stumble because there is no light in him. Verse 11, he said these things and then added, our friend Lazarus is at rest and sleeping, but I am going there that I may awaken him out of his sleep. This is really funny here, guys. A little bit of comical going on in the Bible. In verse 12, the disciples answered, Lord, if he is sleeping, he will recover. Jesus is trying to tell the disciples that Lazarus is dead. And the disciples think he's actually just sleeping and that he's going to recover, okay? Once again, we preached last week, the disciples are a handful, okay? They sometimes just don't catch on very quickly what Jesus is trying to say. 13, however, Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought that he referred to falling into a refreshing and natural sleep. So I love verse 14. So then Jesus told them plainly, Lazarus is dead. He's like, guys, come on. He's not just sleeping. I'm trying to tell you guys, he's actually dead. Like, listen to me here. 15, and if your sake, I am glad that I was not there. It will help you to believe. Verse 16, then Thomas, who was called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, let us go too, that we may die and be killed along with him. Guys, the disciples are still missing the entire point. They think they're now going to be killed. They're not getting, they have no clue what's going on at this point. 17, so when Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. It's important that we understand in the tomb for 4 days. If you have your phones in here, you can Google this. I'm cool with that. If you want to look up what the importance of 4 days is, that is. It's a huge importance because Judaic law taught that through the 3rd day, the spirit remained within the body and there was hope of life. So basically within those 3 days, there was still some type of hope that he could come back. To the 4th day, it's not possible. No way possible. Like nothing. 2nd, 3rd day, yeah. 4th day, absolutely not. I love Jesus here. And the tech crew will make fun of me because I tell them this all the time and I tell Nan this all the time. But I say a couple things, but it's the same thing Jesus says here. Because he waited past their timeline. And I always tell Nan, I'm like, don't tell me how to run my life. Okay? I'm joking. But he's always like telling me little different things. I'll be like, don't tell me how to run my life. But I feel like that's what Jesus is saying here. He's kind of like, don't tell me how to run my life. Okay? Like, okay, you guys said this. I'm going to do this. Or it's like Judah, my 2-year-old. He's like, oh, this is what you told me to do? I'm going to do this, okay? He's doing the complete opposite. He waited past their timeline. Maybe he waited past my timeline too. Maybe he waited past your timeline. Because you said this had to happen here, because you had all your events lined up on your timeline. When River was born, he was transported to Nationwide Children's Hospital in Columbus right away. We were supposed to only possibly get him for 15 minutes in our arms, and I actually got him for a full 30 minutes, which I was pretty excited about. But he was immediately taken to Nationwide Children's. He was transported. So fast forward, and I'm skipping a bunch of details, but when we finally got to see River, I went from holding a baby that was flawless. His body was flawless. You could not tell there was a single thing wrong with this precious, perfect child. Even in his face. He acted like a normal baby. They kept warning me of all these things. He acted like any one of our other kids. Could not tell a single thing. His stats were perfect. Like nothing scary. Okay? I was still thinking, I think we got our miracle. You know what I mean? Like, I think we got it. So when we finally got to see him at Children's, I realized things had changed quickly, okay? He was now hooked up to wires and tubes and machines, and he would just cry and cry and cry. So I had this baby that was happy with me to now just crying and crying. You could tell he was miserable. Within the first few days, they rushed him into life-saving heart surgery because they said, if we don't, it's 4 days, they don't make it. Okay, and I'm not going to go into detail what they have to do, but they have to go in within 4 days. So we had a timeline that he had to go in to start this procedure in his heart. From that point on, he began as critical as could be. And he got even more critical and even more critical. And honestly, he was more critical than the doctors could even comprehend. None of it made sense. His numbers, and like I said, I won't go into it, but there's numbers they check all throughout the body of every single organ, everything you can imagine, from blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen, everything in the body we don't even know exists number-wise. His numbers, his levels, all throughout his body were so bad that they literally kept saying, we're not even sure how he's still alive. Even adults with these numbers they can't live. He had blood sugar literally single digits. He was under 8 at one point. We didn't even know he had blood sugar issues. Heart numbers so high that medical books literally tell you, and they're taught in ICU, that the heart stops long before it'll ever reach this number. And River's heart was there. He was so swollen all over his body, and at this point they had already gone in and done a first repair on his heart. And so he had a massive incision down his chest, and he was so swollen. And how it worked inside is that they did these incisions inside that would dissolve on their own, and then it was sealed on the outside. It wasn't, I forget exactly what it was called, but it was sealed on the outside. And so what began to happen is his body began to expand and swell as he's still fighting to live, and it literally tore his chest open where they had just cut. And so his chest daily, literally morning to night, we would see it just keep tearing open, wide open. They told us because of how critical he was, that the organs of the body were all being damaged, the lack of oxygen and damage to the brain and the head, that there's major brain damage, that the body's had multiple strokes and attacks of you name it, that there's so much damage that his little body was beyond repair. This is what they kept telling us. But yet they kept saying, but yet he keeps fighting to live. It was beyond what I could understand, but beyond, honest with you, it was beyond what any doctor there could understand, and they will tell you that. They will tell you they have no clue. They will tell you that River rewrote all of their medical books. Okay? That's literally what they'll tell you. It went against all known knowledge. And none of us could make sense of it in that moment. And it's the same moments. Not all of us have a heart baby, but it's the same moments in your life where you're frustrated or you're brokenhearted or you're angry or you're sad and you just don't get it. You just don't understand it. But it's in this moment and moments like this in our own lives, it's where we have to have the faith and trust to know this looks ridiculous. But I have to understand that God is good, and I have to understand that all He wants me to do right now is have trust and faith. Two things, trust and faith. How well do you know Him? How well do we know Him? I know that was tested for me. How well do I know Jesus? Have we studied, have we dug our face into this book enough to understand that if something like this happens, are we going to understand what He's doing? Or are we going to dismiss Him right away because we're upset, because we're uncomfortable? We'll scroll through Facebook every morning for an hour, but we can't take 10 minutes to try and understand what He's trying to tell us. John 11:18. Bethany was near Jerusalem, only about 2 miles away, and a considerable number of Jews had gone out to see Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went to meet Him, while Mary remained sitting in the house. That was 18 through 21, by the way. I love that she's fired up. I love that she's fired and she's mad. But I'll explain why. She goes to the gate. She goes running to the gate. She's not happy. Picture this, guys. Because here's the thing. In case you didn't know, we can still have faith and we can still be upset. There's a difference there. We can still have faith and still be upset. We just can't act wrongly on that anger. It needs to be fueled in the right direction. I can picture going to the gate. She's angry. I can picture her going, well. Okay? You can tell she probably has an attitude. I mean, let's be honest. We know she's got an attitude here. Where have you been? Even in her anger, what is important is how she treated him. Follow closely here. Because how many of us out of anger would have had a fist fight right there? And it would have been on Channel 10 that night. This isn't something small. Somebody died. This isn't just a miscommunication. Somebody has died. What would you have done? What would you have done at that gate? What would you have said? How would you have reacted? You know, it would have already been on Facebook. It had already been on Instagram. You would have already trashed Jesus. Like, can you believe what he did after all these years? After how many meals we've cooked for him? Isn't that crazy how quick we can do that? Without even digging really deep into the situation to understand it. What does Mary say here in verse 21? I'm sorry, Martha. Martha then said to Jesus, Master, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Here she says, Master. Other translations say, Lord. That's important because she's showing total respect for him at this point. Total respect for what? For who he is. Because she said Lord. Because she said Master. Total respect. She didn't say, hey jerk, where you been? Why weren't you here? What's your excuse? Because her understanding, even in the moment, her understanding of Jesus never changed. It did not change. She was fiery hot, but she still knew who he was. In the midst of the chaos of watching River struggle for every breath and his chest ripped open, feeling like every breath I took I could barely breathe because there was nothing I could do but stand there. I couldn't even touch him because I just wanted him to sleep if he was sleeping. I didn't want to touch him. I didn't even want him to nudge. I was angry, but I knew who Jesus was. I didn't need to understand why it had to be this. But I knew who he was. I needed to walk up to that gate and just say, Lord. Now, Mary, as you read, Martha does say, if you would have been here. But that was just a little bit of her anger. Once again, she's not acting out on it. How many of us women in here sometimes take that jab? I'm the only one, I admit. I'm just kidding. We're in that argument, and we'll take that one little jab. I feel like that's what this is. Just that one little jab she wanted. Just to make her point clear of, I am not happy with what you did. Sometimes, personally, I just have to tell myself, Kayla, shut up. Like, just quiet. Before you get yourself in more trouble. And I think that's what she did here. She's just like, okay. You said what you want to say, now move on. Moving on, verse 22. And even now, these are very powerful words, even now, I know that whatever you ask from God, he will grant it to you. On the deathbed of my son, even now, he is here. He's showing up. They sent us down to an ICU. They're all bays, and there's the most critical bays, and it's where everybody can get access within seconds. And so we got sent down to a family room because they told us his heart was going to stop. And so they were bringing in everything to be ready right there, the different options. And the surgeon came down and he said, I have 2 options left for River. One is to put River's body on bypass to see if it will give his entire body, organs, lungs, everything a break, to see if he can try and recover and pull out of what's going on. And option 2, but he said on this, he's going to pass, and this is not the option you want. There's really no going back once we do this. And option 2, he said, it's really, I don't know if it's an option because I can't really say it, but he said, option 2 couldn't happen until a couple levels in the body are fixed, because if I took him in right this minute, we'd lose him instantly. But we can go back in to the heart and we can do a few more repairs. The problem is, I don't even know if we can get him down through the OR and through anesthesia to do this. So the surgeon went back down to the ICU bay to River, and Nam and I literally got on our phones and we called and we texted and we posted to every single person we could imagine to pray and to believe with us that River would have a fighting chance of life, and that God would hear us, and that God would answer our prayers, and that we would get our miracle. We told everybody we need a true miracle. Those were the words we used. 10 minutes later, no joke, 10 minutes later, the surgeon comes back down. He said, these were his exact words. He said, I sat at River's feet and I talked to him. That got me. He said, I talked to him and I asked him to push me which way he wanted to go. He said, I asked River, what do you want? And tell me plain and clearly. And he said, immediately, the 2 levels I needed to see changed, literally changed. And I had an entire team that said, let's go. So they come sprinting down to the family room and they said, let's go. And so we all line up with River, and we've got an entire team ready for, they were believing his heart would stop just in the hallway down to the OR. And so I'm behind 20 people that are pushing a little incubator. And we'd have to stop on certain bumps as they would start to bagging, and as they'd wait for his heart rate to come back up, and as the ladies that were pulling the suitcases that had the crash bags ready. And they'd start to unzip everything and start to pull stuff out. And then his heart rate would fix, it would come right back up. We made it all the way to the OR. Fast forward in the OR, he said, I lost him multiple times. We performed CPR multiple times. He came back multiple times. John 11:23-26. Jesus said to her, your brother shall rise again. Martha replied, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at that last day. That's what I thought. Because I realized at that point I had come to peace with knowing how bad River was, how severe, how much damage has been done in his body, that I came to the knowledge of knowing I do believe in heaven. I know that I will see him again one day. I'm at peace with this. And that's what she was saying here. I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. She was taking it how she could take it. It's the same thing I did with River. 25, Jesus said to her, okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Verse 25, Jesus said to her, I am myself the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, although he may die, yet he shall live. And whoever continues to live and believes in me shall never die at all. Do you believe this? I said I would see River one day. And Jesus said to me, Kayla, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. I didn't do what you wanted me to do or how you wanted me to do it because I wanted you to see who I am. I did it because I love you. And you really didn't know who I was. 27, she said to him, yes, Lord, I have believed. I do believe that you are the Christ, the Messiah, the Anointed One, the Son of God, who was to come into the world. This is where Martha knew inside who he was. It would have been nice if you would have done it, but I know who you are, and that's all that matters. Continues on in 28. After she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary, privately whispering to her, the teacher is close at hand and is asking for you. When she heard this, she sprang up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the same spot where Martha had met him, when the Jews who were sitting with her in the house and consoling her saw Mary had arisen and gone out. They followed her, supposing that she was gone to the tomb to pour out her grief there. When Mary came to the place where Jesus was and saw him, she dropped down at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Verse 35, what did he say? Jesus wept. Jesus wept. Before he brought Lazarus back to life, he wept. Because if we read in verse 33, when Jesus saw her sobbing and the Jews who came with her sobbing, he was deeply moved in the spirit and troubled. And he said, where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. And in verse 35, he wept. Jesus wept. That gets my heart. It showed how much he loved them. It shows how much he was with them. Why do we know that? Because we know that he was with them because he wept. He understood it. He was there. So in those moments where I'm sitting in an ICU, or in that moment where you think, you left me, you didn't show up, you weren't here, you don't understand my pain. 35 says he wept, which meant he was there. He was as near and as close as he could possibly get. But it's just like we spoke last week, in the past 2 weeks. But because we couldn't feel him, see him, or hear him in his silence, we thought he wasn't there. We couldn't understand that. I couldn't understand that. He was with me in an ICU bed. He was with me with a baby, with a flawless, perfect body, with no marks was pulled from my chest. We know he was there. Just the moment she thought he wasn't there, she realizes he's there because he wept. 35 through 34. Jesus wept. The Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he have opened a blind man's eye, have prevented this man from dying?" Now Jesus, again sighing, repeatedly and deeply approached the tomb. It was a cave. Sorry guys, I've got a mark on my Bible. And a boulder lay against the entrance. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, exclaimed, "But Lord, by this time he is decaying." And he throws off an offensive odor, for he has been dead 4 days. Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you and promise you that if you would believe and rely on me, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. Yes, I know you always hear and listen to me, but I have said this on the account and for the benefit of the people standing, so that they may believe that you did send me." On River, when he was in the OR, they did a surgery backwards that neither surgeon had done before. So this surgery that they typically do, the one they actually do, is done a totally different way. The one they performed on River, they had never done, they had never gone in the way they did, and they totally did it backwards. River was brought back that day. It took weeks, literally, of watching his eyes open, swelling go down, organs recover, which they told me isn't possible. They don't see that. Symptoms of stroke and brain damage disappeared. Just in this past month and a half, River has come back to us, slowly. If you have seen River or met River, you know what I mean by that. He's here now. I set a neurology appointment 3 weeks ago. He said, "I don't even know who this kid is." He saw him in September. He said, "I don't even know who this kid is." He double-checked his chart to make sure he had the right name. And he said, "We were going to order the MRI just so we could look at the stroke damage and the brain damage." He said, "But it's going to show us he has stroke damage and brain damage, but this baby doesn't show stroke damage or brain damage, so why waste putting him through that?" I asked the worship team to come up. Verse 42. "Yes, I know you always hear and listen to me, but I have said this on the account of and for the benefit of the people standing around, so that they may believe that you did send me, that you have made me your messenger." When he had said this, he shouted with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." And out walked a man who had been dead, his hands and his feet wrapped in burial cloths. There were linen strips, and there was a burial napkin. The importance here is we didn't let death convince us that Jesus didn't love us. That was the point of this story. He loved me so much. He let my son die before me and come back to life. He waited 2 days. He loved us so much. I know everyone in here or watching online, they have a different story of Lazarus. And it's probably totally different from mine. But whether you believe it or not, you have a story of Lazarus in here. Did you let it convince you that Jesus didn't love you? Or did you look at it and you say, "Wow, I really realized and have found who you are"? also want to ask you a question. I want you to close your eyes when I ask this question. I want everybody's eyes closed. Did you forget he wept? That meant he was right there with you. He wept. He wept for you. Dear Jesus, we come to you tonight and we thank you. We thank you for who you are. Sometimes we don't always understand. And most of the time it doesn't make sense to us. And sometimes it's the most uncomfortable that we could ever imagine. But to realize how much you love us and who you really are. I know there's people that are probably listening and you're saying, you know what? I'm still mad. I could say that, but I'm not going to. I can't stand here and tell you I'm mad of what happened with River's life, because then I tell you I didn't know who Jesus was, but I do know who Jesus is. I understand who he is. That he loves you so much he wept. That he wept so much that he got up on a cross and he died for your life and you didn't even deserve it. That instead of an eternity of torture, we're heading home. We thank you, Jesus. We thank you for your love. We thank you for your reckless love. In your precious and holy name we pray. Amen.
Would you stand and worship with us? Saturday was silent, surely it was slow. But since when has impossible ever stopped?
Hey, it was just a dead battery. I love it, and we didn't plan this, but I love it when God works things out in His plan. I didn't plan on them ending with this song, but this is the song that, while he was getting his surgeries, this is the song that Kayla and I listened to on repeat. And the song that, you know how you have that worship song, it's kind of your anthem, it's what gets you through what's going on. That's all right, he'll bounce back up if he falls. It's all right. But no, I just, Kayla and I wanted to bring him up as we close, and I'll listen to the message if you're watching online at 8 when you guys do, because I didn't get to. I had Judah. As you can see, he's being pretty fickle. So I had him out there, but man, what a blessing he is, though. What a blessing he is. He's just looking around. Thank you guys for joining us tonight for service, and we feel very, very blessed to be able to have Foundation Church and the support that you guys gave us while we were going through all this. And definitely have some more to do, but we are getting there. And River, as you can see, is doing really, really well. So, a couple things as we close. A couple announcements. If you want to give tonight, there are buckets around the room, and we have envelopes in the back that you can put in your tithe or offering and put them in the orange buckets, or you can give online. We had our men's Bible study this last week. We had a good group for that. And if you want to join us this Wednesday, it's 7 o'clock at Coffee Shack in Heath. We'd love to have you join us for that. Do you have anything else? No. So I think we're good, and I think that I'm going to close service with a quick prayer, and then we'll be on our way. Lord, I thank you for this worship team, all the people that volunteer at this church and help us with service to make this happen. Lord, we love you, and we thank you for the love that you show us and the grace that you give us every day. Lord, give us strength and courage as we head into the week to live our lives every day as a reflection of you. And it's in your name we pray. Amen. Amen.